Hello, everyone, and welcome to my presentation on Get Tough and Zero Tolerance Policies. Punishment of minority youths in school settings. Punishment of minority youths were feared by juvenile increase of crime, which developed further punishments and stricter and harsher punishments by Get Tough policies. To start off with, Get Tough policies were intended to increase school safety by reducing gun possession in schools. Eventually, the policies then evolved to include minor offenses such as drug and alcohol possession, smoking, truancy and attendance issues, and even disrespectful attitudes against teacher and school staff. African American youths were unfortunately disproportionately punished harsher than Caucasians of the same offenses. The history of Get Tough and Zero Tolerance policies. Get Tough policies were developed through an increased fear of juvenile crime. Even though reduction of juvenile crime was occurring, it did not change how schools handled youth offenses in schools. In-school offenses increased, thus causing punishments to increase and become more stricter. In-school offenses became minor, such as the ones previously mentioned, like truancy and disobedient behavior, attitudes against teachers. All those things affected school punishment. Use of suspensions, arrests by school contracted police within the city or even school officers, and referral to juvenile justice systems increased as well. Suspension rates from schools increased 80% from 1974 to 2012. Zero tolerance policies were implemented in 1980 and 1990s through a fear of juvenile crime. Within that time as well, the Gun-Free School Zone Act was passed in 1994. This was due to an increased fear of school shootings, mass shootings, and overall fear of juvenile gun ownership within schools. The thought behind zero tolerance policies was that strong enforcement acts as a deterrent to other disruptive behaviors. However, the causation of this had major negative effects. The idea was based on the broken windows theory, that strict punishments of minor offenses in the social order would send a strong message of zero tolerance, of no tolerance of minor offenses. Some of the effects of Get Tough and zero tolerance policies, like I said before, disproportionately affected African American youths. These individuals were targeted mostly by minor offenses such as disruptive behavior in the classroom or attitudes against teachers. Teachers would then use punitive measures such as suspensions, in-school suspension, or even after-school use of punishment. Since 1973, the use of suspensions tripled for African Americans. In Chicago, Illinois, specifically, suspension rates increased from 81 to 1,000 in 3 years after the implementation of zero tolerance policies in 1995. However, one of the issues is conflicting messages for school administrators and teachers were starting to become an issue. Schools attempting to refer juveniles to the juvenile justice system faced resistance by police officers to arrest these individuals, mostly because the police didn't see it as a serious enough offense to cause an arrest. For example, a 14-year-old student with mental illness was facing arrest charges just because they stole $2 from another student. The school was attempting to have them arrested. However, the police smartly refused to do so. Other conflicts included between administrators and teachers. Teachers would want to use punitive measures to punish a student. However, school administrators suggest they use more social policies. Thus, disparities in applications were very much present. Racial disparities exist in application of school disciplines. One of the biggest examples of this was the school-to-prison pipeline in Pennsylvania. African American youth overrepresented in office referrals, expulsions, and corporal punishments. It was thought to be linked to poverty rather than race. However, research shows that racial gaps are as more likely to occur in rich suburban areas as they are in poor urban areas. So there seems to be a disagreement on the causation of these disparities with researchers. Some research suggested that race affected how punishments were dished out. However, not all research agreed with that idea. There's many efforts to reduce harsh punishments. As mentioned before, some schools attempted to implement support-oriented approaches to punishments before punitive measures. These support approaches included counseling, monitoring, mediation, and referral to outside services. School-based intervention programs, that of cognitive behavioral interventions, such as those applied by therapeutic staff supporters and their BSCs, or behavioral consultant supporters, and those applied by applied behavior analytics, or ABA practice. While ABA is used for those children on the spectrum, it is applicable rather to behavioral issues as well. Conflict resolution programs targeted motivated children, teaching practical skills to manage anger. One-on-one sessions use role play, modeling, feedback, and reinforcement. Much of these cognitive interventions all play very similar roles with one another. Therapeutic staff supporters in particular, along with conflict resolution programs, work very closely together. ITPs, developed by school staff and school counselors and by the BSCs and psychologists, all use a group effort to develop treatment goals and plans that are effective in reducing delinquent behavior with students. One of the biggest cases or diagnoses that we see is ODD, or oppositional defiance disorder, within students. Now, it is important to note that many of these students are minority youths, and a lot of the time they're overlooked by mental illness. They're just missed out on the opportunity and are sent off to referrals to the juvenile justice system. These programs, school-based programs and conflict resolution programs, attempt to aid these individuals before they're sent to referral. Mental health and behavioral services. School-based interventions target referred children by parents or even school staff. Many times, school staff will request services for a particular student who's facing behavioral issues. Many similarities exist within programs observing cognitive behavioral interventions, as mentioned before, by TSS and cognitive behavioral intervention programs and conflict management programs. Use of these conflict management programs use expressive social skills training, reinforcers, and other strategies to promote changes in behavior. Prompting scales are used to aid the client with utilizations of prompt reductions. For example, if we're attempting to use prompts to engage social engagement with another student, while at the same time managing anger and conflict, we'll use prompts and prompt reductions to eventually make that behavior become independent. Such prompts will include verbal, both partial and full verbal, or even modeling and role play to help aid them to become independent in that behavior. Trained staff certified in conflict resolution, light restraints, and behavioral interventions are utilized. Light restraints are important because some of our clients can become aggressive, and we need to keep them and ourselves safe. The only time restraints are used are when they become a danger to themselves or others. Support staff aid in training of school personnel and parents in mitigating or even reducing maladaptive behavior or negative behavior that we don't want to see. Some successes and challenges. School-based interventions have a moderate effect on psychological stress. Interventions show positive success in reduction of violence, and programs with longer durations tend to show greater success with combination of classroom and instructional management strategies, including the teacher and reductions of behaviors is very crucial. Training school staff is important. However, psychological stress reduction was only shown in school stress and not social stress. That's why it's critical for TSS, therapeutic staff supporters, to also have in-home services many times with these kids. There is a conflict with dual use of get tough policies and support-oriented approaches. As discussed previously, there's conflicts with teachers wanting to use punitive applications. However, the school administration rejects it. Small sample sizes of studies are a big issue with the effectiveness of these school-based interventions. Very little evidence for effectiveness of restorative justice practices in schools are also an issue. Very little studies have been conducted on restorative justice practices in schools, and that's a major issue in understanding the effectiveness overall of these programs. In conclusion, conflict resolutions programs, while they work together with Get Tough policies and support services, there are conflicts and they need to be solved. Luckily, more and more schools are starting to realize Get Tough policies and zero tolerance policies are ineffective. They're not working. They make more issues. Expanding access to children through health insurance policies is important. Many of these kids are missing out on services they need, and an increase with health insurance is important. Screening these kids at an early age is important for behavioral issues such as ODD. Include evidence-based research to schools and policymakers on success. It's important to use evidence-based research to show that these programs are working. That means we have to expand sample sizes from isolated schools to state or even nationwide programs. Many of these support-oriented and in-school services are spread out nationwide. While there are many to use and analyze, many have similar backgrounds. Many use similar ideologies to work. Increase parent knowledge of support programs that exist. This one is very critical. Many parents don't realize there's programs out there to help them. I've come across many clients that have said it took them too long to figure out that there is help with both in-school and outside services. Increasing parent knowledge is one of the most important steps. Training school staff in mental health and observing issues and behavior and training them to mitigate behavior is also critical. All of these come together to aid in the reduction of delinquent behavior. That concludes our presentation on Get Tough and Zero Tolerance policies. Thank you very much for participating.